between all the leading scientific institutions and scientists working with the UN on its climate panel. These people are very nasty people. They are malevolent people. You read the emails, they are full of hate and spite and nastiness and cheating and fraud. And everyone who's been reading these emails, including those who previously supported this climate nonsense, is now saying, what on earth have we done agreeing with these people without having checked? And I at least can be proud to say that I smelt the same rat that this merchant bank smelt when it called me in. And the moment I began looking at what they were doing, it was clear that these people were up to something. Now we have the proof I've long been looking for, that all the people I've been watching are linked, and linked very closely by daily emails between each other, plotting how to keep this scare going and how to get rich on it at your expense and at mine.
The thing is that it's kind of like a paradox in a sense that the people that are referring to these leaked emails, you have to understand, which I'm sure you know better than most, that that's a blip on the screen. Just a blip on the screen in the overall gestalt of what's occurring. To me, the devil's in the detail of the treaty. The treaty is the consciousness, the organistic framework by which the ground of everything is, its purpose is to roll out. The devil is in the treaty.
The treaty is the legal framework.
Well, that's everything.
Once a nation has signed it will be bound to it forever because, of course, they've been very careful not to include in this treaty the provision that is included in the original treaty setting up the Conference of the States Parties to the Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Is that available to the public?
That treaty, the original treaty, it all up in the first place, is available, and that treaty gives any nation the right to secede. That means to have nothing further to do with the Framework Convention on Climate Change at will by notifying the other parties and giving them, I think it's 3 months notice or something like that. Now, that is quite a normal provision in international treaties, but the framers of this new treaty, this sinister world government treaty with vast amounts of taxation and regulation power, there they have put in no provision for any nation having signed this treaty to get out from under it again unless the standard provisions for seceding from international treaties in the absence of any provision in the treaty apply. And that is, you'd have to get the agreement of all the other states parties to that treaty before you could secede. And since America, for instance, Canada likewise, are on the paying end of this treaty and not on the receiving end, I can tell you for free that the third world countries who are going to sign this treaty because it doesn't bind them and they hope it will make them rich, or at least it will enrich the bank accounts of their leaders in the Swiss and Belgian banks, those people are never going to let you out. They will keep you in, they will confine you, they will imprison you in this treaty once Obama signs it, once Stephen Harper signs it. If he does, I hope he won't. I'm quite sure that the commissars of the European Union will sign it because, of course, they already believe in communist central government with no democratic input. And they'd be very happy to see that spread to the rest of the world.
Hasn't the European Union taken over the city of London? Hasn't the European Union just taken possession of the city of London?
It has indeed, and I remember having breakfast one morning with the Lord Mayor of London. This was about 25 years ago, at the time when the question was where the European Central Bank was going to be put. And I was writing editorial comments for a very influential newspaper in London at the time called the Evening Standard. And he was wanting to lobby me to persuade me to write saying that the European Central Bank should be situated in London and not, as it is now, in Frankfurt. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because Britain is not going to join the euro, not by the will of its people. And I said, what is worse, it is quite clear that in the next few years, the European Union will start making moves to take over the regulation of the City of London. And within a year of that happening, the City of London will be a busted flush and people will be queuing to get out. And I can now give you some rather interesting figures, because where is everybody going as they leave the City of London like rats from a sinking ship? All the big brokerage houses, all the big finance houses, all the big insurers, they're all getting out while the going is good, and they're going to Switzerland, which is outside the dead hand of this European dictatorship. And the canton of Zug, which is where all the financial centers are, has had to close for the first time in history its list of corporations wishing to move there because there are simply so many of them. The flight from Britain has begun. The end of the city of London is at hand. That little square mile of land, with its boys in red braces, used to generate something like 1/8 of the entire gross domestic product of Britain. Now we are going to lose that and lose it forever because our politicians didn't have the foresight to see what it was that Europe was trying to do to us. And I say Europe, I don't mean the peoples of Europe, whom we love and admire and like to work and play with. I mean the Europe of this sinister bureaucracy which the European Union has become. That Europe which has a parliament purely as a fig leaf of democracy. That Parliament of Europe has no power to propose legislation. It has no power to decide legislation because if it does, the unelected commissars can override it. It has no power to amend legislation because once again, the commissars can and very nearly always do override any amendments that it may make. It is a Duma or talking shop, not a real parliament, and it is purely there to convince people that the European Union is democratic really, when in fact, as one Danish MEP put it to me many years ago, if the European Union were to apply for membership of the European Union, its application would be decisively and unhesitatingly rejected on the grounds that it does not comply with the requirements that member states should be democratically elected.
How did this happen? How did the European Union become so powerful? I don't get it.
By exactly the same method as the world government is hoping to become powerful, by stealth. It was done by getting the agreement of the political class in each of the member states, first of all, the civil service bureaucrats who aren't elected themselves and work in the shadows and hate the fact that every few years there's a change of government and a change of policy and they have to change gear and point in a different direction. They hate that. They want to run the thing permanently themselves without interference from politicians. The European Union allows them a new forum in which they can do that. And what the European Union very craftily did, and it's exactly the same thing that's proposed in this treaty which is being negotiated in Copenhagen, is they managed effectively to recruit the national civil service bureaucrats in each country as the agents of the central dictatorship. Each little bureaucrat acts as a satrap, if you like, of the Persian Empire. He acts as the local goon who enforces the will, the Gauleiter under the Nazi system, who enforces the will of the Führer. And this is really what it is. It is essentially a fascist or communist structure in which there's no input of democracy at any point and therefore no input of common sense at any point, in which the political class is prodigiously enriched, both in its powers and in its wealth at the expense of taxpayers, in which there is virtually no added value for taxpayers from the existence or antics of the European Union at any level. And precisely that structure has been copied, almost carbon copied, into the new international global government treaty. But they're not even going to bother to have the fig leaf of an elected parliament. They don't want to slow the process down by having a parliament that has even the right to speak out and say, hang on a moment, the emperor has no clothes. It's all nonsense. They aren't even going to allow that. It's going to be a dictatorship and an avowed dictatorship right from the start.
And I noticed that there's a huge propensity of celebrities around the world that are being ushered in, pulled into the fold to be the voice pieces of the fact that global warming is an atrocity. In other words, it literally is unfolding as a kind of religious phenomenon. And if you don't go with the flow...
It's very sinister. What happens is somebody who is perhaps prominent but not generally agreeing as heartily as they would wish with the new superstition is called quietly in and is given a talking to. Oh boy, do you want that zoning permit for the extension to your new house? You just go along with us on this global warming thing, make a couple of speeches in favour of what we all know is the truth. Of course, they know perfectly well it's a lie, but this is what they say, and we'll get you your zoning permit. Or can we make you a UN ambassador for global warming? We'll pay you $250,000 a year and give